Hey, Clemson family, it is surprisingly busy on campus right now. Spring game just wrapped up, some off-season things going on with both football and basketball right now. Of course, baseball and softball in the thick of things too. I'm Bill Zimmerman. This is the Reign Supreme All A podcast.
I'm Daniel Shirley. We've got comings and goings in the spring, and a lot of them, uh, especially for basketball, but some for football as well. So we'll take a look at those.
Yep, and let's just jump right into the football because I think that's one thing that a lot of people are interested in. The spring game unfortunately wasn't broadcast this year. It wasn't on TV anywhere. There's going to be an hour-long special about the Clemson Tiger football program in lieu of having had that game on TV. So looking forward to that, waiting to see when that will be announced. But of all the things I read there's been some sort of informal YouTube videos out there of guys running plays and this and that. People just shot stuff from the stands. That's kind of cool to see. I'm glad people were able to do that. I wish I'd been able to drive up to the game, but it's a long way to get up there from Florida. And the new format, it was such a short game, no home baseball weekend. It kind of just all turned into, yeah, much as I'd love to, I just can't see putting the time into that. One of the reactions that I saw out of this year that really stood out to me regards Cade Klubnik.
Be sure to subscribe at youtube.com/Clemson Kickoff. It's free, it's the best place to catch all our episodes, and it's the best place for you to comment with your reactions.
And how people reacted to the backups having a good game this year compared to last year. Remember, Klubnik didn't have much of a good showing in that spring game, and Trent Pearman, yeah, had to think hard to think back one full year, remember his name, because we haven't heard it much since then, right? But
Right.
look, we can actually sit here and enjoy the fact that Christopher Vizina looked good in that game, that Chris Denson, the true freshman, looked good in that game. And we can say, look, this is Cade's team. We know it. He's got several games under his belt as a clear-cut starter. There's no doubt about that. And so you can start to appreciate, hey, nice to see Vizina is more ready for action, whether that is next year after Klubnik is gone, whether that is being pressed into service unexpectedly sooner, which we hope we don't see. More likely, just some rotation snaps and seeing him get some better playing time on the field. What was your takeaway from the spring game? What stood out to you, Daniel, as you've been catching all these accounts as well?
The first thing, as you said, I was glad I didn't have to hear that Trent Pearman was going to be Clemson's starter because that's all we heard this time last year. Is, oh my God, Trent Pearman's going to be the starter. Um, I believe like the thing that I read that I enjoyed the most was how much better the tackling was by the defense. And I read that at a couple of different places. So it wasn't just one person saying those things. So and Bill, I think that was the biggest issue with last year's team. I mean, I don't I know this team lost in the first round of the playoff and Clemson fans have higher expectations for that. I thought last year going into the season, and we might have said it, is getting to the playoff was the step for this team. Obviously, if it goes further than that and wins the championship, nobody's going to complain. But it had to get back in the playoff so we could stop hearing this narrative that Clemson's football is done. Oh my God, it's terrible. It's never been any good. All those things. So it got to the playoff, but then the tackling, the misfitting of gaps, of the lack of discipline on defense, all came to a head in that Texas game. And even when Clemson cut the lead down to 7, right, in the second half, boom, what do we say? Big play, long touchdown run. So it feels like those things are at least being addressed where last year, maybe the year before, it didn't feel like they were being addressed. And they're on the way to being fixed. They're not perfect, they're not fixed, but it doesn't feel like that Tom Allen's going to accept that. It's weird that only one defensive coach has changed. I would have thought, with him coming in, there would have been a couple of more changes. There haven't been. There have been some additions. His son, Ben Bolware, I get all that. But as far as the quote unquote assistant coaches, and there's a those that title has changed now with all the additional staff members. When it used to be 9 assistants, and we knew who could recruit, we knew who could be on the field. all that stuff is gone now. But that one change, it feels like it's changed the entire energy of this defense. And it starts with the tackling. And from all indications, reading and again, it's a spring game and not even a full game. Those things are at least being addressed and on the way to being fixed.
Connect with us on social media. That's at Clemson Kickoff. Whether you're on Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky, or Facebook, you'll find us there.
Yeah, all reports definitely talking about the defense having a different energy about it. People who are reporting from practices, beat reporters who are there on the ground all the time, and you love to see it, and I hope it holds up. And I hope that's going to lead to good player retention, which Clemson already has. Coming out of last season and through the spring, there are some expected departures, or at least one announced departure and another one rumored. So we'll see what happens as this portal window easy for me to say, as this portal window opens up in the spring, which happens Wednesday the 16th. So just about the time you finish filing your taxes, you'll be able to start paying attention to who's coming and going from the program. Now, the one that has been announced is cornerback Tavoy Fegan, redshirt freshman, if I remember correctly, nicknamed Seatbelt. Well, he's going to buckle up and head out of town, apparently. And look, you wish him well, right? You hope he goes on to play well wherever he does. Maybe doesn't earn victories against Clemson. That's fine, I think, to root against, but we'll just see what happens. I think there's several positions where the depth chart has enough names that some guys might decide, hey, I'm buried too deep. I'll get going. But I think if we would have seen a lot of that, we would have, we already have seen the guys who want to leave for the most part out of that winter portal window.
Well, the portal officially opens Wednesday, so we'll see when those names actually go in. And from what I've been told, it takes about 48 hours for the schools to process that and actually put the paperwork in. And Bill, we also got to remember a component of this is if this House versus NCAA settlement does go through, which everybody expects it to do, they've got to get down to 105 as a roster limit anyway. No more scholarship limits, but the roster limit is 85. And from someone whose son worked for the football team for 4.5 years, I could tell you Clemson never had 105. There were 120, 130. There were all the walk-ons. So they've got to get down to 105. And Dabo has said that we're going to have to cut some walk-ons. So is if Tavoy Fegan leaves, that doesn't necessarily mean Clemson's going in the portal and getting somebody else to take that spot. That's somebody else who maybe they don't lose a spot, who's already with the team. So, and he was kind of buried on the depth chart. He hadn't been really healthy, very much anyway. So if you're going to lose somebody, and nothing against him, wish him well, hope he goes and has a great career. I'm never one of those who cheers against a young man from wanting to make the best decision for him, whatever that is. Again, I don't want him beating Clemson every, once a year or twice a year, whatever it might be. But this doesn't feel like it's one where you pull your hair out and start freaking out. This is one where you go, okay, he decided he's not going to be here. This is whatever's best for him. The team just moves on, the coaching staff moves on, and go with the guys who are on the roster.
That's right. It's about the ones you get, as a lot of people say, and including Dabo. And I guess now it's becoming all about the ones you keep as well,
Right.
not just out of that transfer portal, but again, a lot of recruiting decommitments, commitments, decommitments. Top 5 lists that are changing. So we'll see how all that goes. And at least to our knowledge, Clemson has not flushed as much money down the toilet as perhaps that school over the Tennessee, North Carolina border, a little ways away from the Tigers' home campus. So speaking of portal, some gains for the basketball team, as we've had some big men come in since the last podcast episode. We've been keeping people posted on that online via social media, but I will bring that up in just a moment. And the latest one, Daniel, why don't you go ahead and go into it while I bring this up?
Yeah, I mean, I think you look at these ads, and I think it's a good start. I think that you know when you get these kinds of players, they've gotten some big men, right? They've gotten several big men, and then you go into, all right, well, we've got three or four big men who are coming up, including R.J. Godfrey, who we who we all know as people who follow the Clemson basketball program. But you need some guards, and you need some guys on the outside. And Bill, I'll tell you something else they need is veterans, and I think you're starting to see that. And go after guys that have some playing experience, and they've started to do that. And I do like the latest move, Butta Johnson played at UAB. He's not a score 20, 25 points a game kind of guy. A, how many of those guys are out there? B, how many of those guys are going to accept the money that Clemson has to offer them? So, but look at all those freshmen and incoming freshman names,
Yeah.
5 of them. So you need some guys who are veterans, uh, who can and who can play a little bit more, and including Butta Johnson, right? And he scored 8.5, 9 points a game last year. He scored more than 11 the year before. So I do think that he's a guy who can help this team. And maybe maybe he's not a 20 point per night guy, but maybe he's a defender, a leader, those kinds of things. A lot of the things that we saw from Dylan Hunter the last couple of years, because they said they certainly need that with all of the new, which there's going to be a ton of new, right? I mean, like we said, Dylan
Yep.
Hunter is the only guy returning who's touched the court in a Clemson uniform, and all of the young. You need some veterans, and you need some leadership. You need some guys who are willing to accept their role. And I think that's what you're seeing Clemson go after with this group.
I'll also add that we had to update this after we recorded the full thing. I'm jumping in to say that Clemson on Monday afternoon also added Jake Wahlin, forward out of Utah. He's 6'10", averaged about 6.5 points a game in 33 games for the Utes last year. If you're watching on YouTube or listening on Spotify, where there's video also available, you'll be able to see the updated chart on the screen rather than have to look at our faces. You look at Nick Davidson coming in, and he's going to be a senior. I don't usually like to say redshirt senior, so a lot of that stuff is not detailed on there. 15.8 points per game in 33 games at Nevada. And then Carter Welling, another big man. So it'll be maybe a little bit of a Twin Tower situation, and then Godfrey mixing in as needed. You've got Dallas Thomas, who you hope can mix in and start to develop. You got Trent Steinauer and Chase Thompson joining the team, and you hope that they are going to be able to get some minutes out there. You have been pretty critical about Brad Brownell not getting a lot of minutes for young guys, and especially those early season games where you think that would be an option. And then, Blake Davidson is going to join his brother, Nick Davidson. He decommitted from Nevada as well and will be coming to Clemson. So I don't think that's technically a transfer portal acquisition, since he was released from his NLI. And then, as you mentioned, Butta Johnson, I think he's about 6'4", so he should be very versatile out there on the perimeter and in the backcourt for the Tigers. And someone on social media posted a really nice clip of him hitting a defended jumper against the Tigers and said, "Hey, would love to see him doing this for us instead."
Yes.
So it'll be interesting to see things gel, and I don't think Brownell is done yet.
Well, I mean, you got 4 more spots on the roster, right? Do they all have to be scholarship spots? Probably they probably won't be. But depending on how many of these 11 are scholarships, I think last year they carried 12 to 13 scholarship players, maybe 11, and had 4 walk-ons. So maybe that's kind of what we see. But there's 11 on this list. There's 4 more spots on the roster to go, and I think at least one of those needs to be some kind of a scoring guard. And we'll see who those are.
Hey, check out our website, clemsonkickoff.com. It's got kickoff times. It's got archives of episodes and blogs, some offers. It's a simple resource for you.
Let's go ahead and swing over to the baseball diamond and the softball diamond. Daniel, I know you're keeping up pretty well with the softball team, which is just on fire lately, doing very, very well. I think I saw a tweet where they have already clinched a spot in the ACC softball tournament. So I guess that's one of those tournament formats, as all these tournament formats are changing, shuffling. That is not one where everybody gets in, whereas the baseball tournament now is. Tigers took 2 out of 3 against Stanford, a little disappointing on Sunday, but heck of a come from behind win on Saturday. And of course, Aidan Knaak is really driving the bus for that team, isn't he?
He is, and he and Cam Cannarello are finalists for the Golden Spikes, and Knaak looks like he could be, or that they're in the mix. Knaak looks like he could be one of those guys, and
Yeah.
And not that Cam's not. Cam's having a fine year. He's not hitting for as much power this year as he did last year. And again, you wonder, is that left over from the shoulder and the surgery, all those things. But Aidan Knaak has been outstanding on the mound, and he's had to be, Bill, because the other two starting spots in the weekend, the midweek starting spot, have not been good. They've got to get that figured out. At least somebody reliable for 3 or 4 innings on those other two weekend spots, because they're not getting that right now. Somebody you can trust every week. But look, they're still 33-6. They're still 11-4 in the ACC. Kind of hard to complain about that, even though Crazy Daniel will complain about things through the weekend. But
X.com/Clemson kickoff, you'll see it.
Yes. I will say that the ACC schedule is about to get a lot tougher with Louisville coming up. I know they still have to play Florida State. Duke has been a much improved team over the way it started ACC play. So those things are going, that rotation on the weekends got to get worked out. They've started to find a little more power in the lineup. Colin Priest has hit some home runs. Jarrell has hit some more home runs, started to hit some home runs. I'd love to see Gaffney start to hit some, but they've got to get something out of the bottom of the lineup too. The bottom two have just not hit at all. So we'll see. But look, they're having a great year, you would think the way they just find ways to win games, that's a lot harder to find than somebody to hit home runs, right? They don't quit. They play 27 outs every game, and it's really impressive. And we'll see. And the softball team's the same way. I mean, look, Bill, this softball team was 3-6 at one point,
Right.
and kicking the ball all over the field. And they are just impressive. They've won 11 of their last 12 ACC games, and they've got 5 or 6 freshmen in the playing rotation. They're in the mix playing. I know Coach Rittman is rotating a couple of those freshmen in the outfield throughout the games. They got some who start every game, but it's been an impressive run for this softball team that, 10 games into the season, which is a small sample size, looked like it probably wouldn't make the NCAA tournament. And now there's a really good chance for this team to host a regional.
Very impressive, and sort of a big picture, season long ability to dig out and find your form, find that ability to really compete and win at a high level. And the baseball team tends to do that on a daily inning to inning basis, within each game, ending to fall behind. Not getting a lot of innings out of their starters is something that concerns me for the long haul. And especially once you get into tournament formats, right? Like that's when it gets really difficult to mount a charge. You can't be turning to Lucas Malstedt for 3 inning saves once you're into a regional or super regional, because that's going to wipe them out
for the rest of the tournament.
Yeah, that 1 hour per pitch that Erik Bakich talks about. Well, if you're out there throwing 50, 60 pitches, you better have an off day in there. And guess what? Those aren't baked into those postseason tournament formats. So they really have to find some other guys emerging, and a big challenge for pitching coach Jimmy Bellinger to get some guys to develop on the fly. Guys have been getting better on the fly. It's got to continue. not too dissimilar from what we started out the show talking about with Cade Klubnik, right? He found a way to improve his game on the fly last season in a way that I really didn't think was going to happen. He proved me wrong, proved a lot of his naysayers wrong. That's what these Clemson pitchers have to do is find that way to, elevate their games. Now, Talon Bell bouncing back from injury, so it's understandable that he hasn't been, top form out of the gate. Why would you expect that? He's battling back from injury as well as adjusting to a new level of competition. You have to be patient with a guy who's in those shoes. Bailey elevated into a different role, looking really good, looking promising at least. And again, can he develop? Can he figure out the things that'll get him into a groove by the time the postseason gets here in late May? And a lot of guys you can look at that way. Some guys started out hot, Jaron Purified, Drew Titsworth. Then they kind of settled a little bit, right? Plateaued a little bit, had some rough days. They can find it. They can get that top form again and bounce back. So there's a lot of hope for this team. Look, there's a reason that they are number 2, number 3, number 4 in the polls recently, depending on which poll you look at. So the talent is there. Can they find a way to be more consistent?
Well, they've got to be. And look, they're not doing it like other teams, right? You're seeing Georgia just crush home runs. There's some of these other teams that have a lot more power. I think they flashed the stat the other day. I think Clemson was 130th in the country in slugging. So there's not a lot of power
No.
in this lineup, even though Colin Priest can hit one on top of the batting cage building, at any moment like he did this weekend. But the defense, most part, is really, really good. This is one of the best defensive teams Clemson has had in a long time. That was always a problem under Monty Lee, the fundamentals and those kinds of things. But they're kind of piecing together the pitching staff. All that's true. But in 3 short years, there is a real culture about this program again. And there was never any kind of culture under Monty Lee. There was we know the program had dipped at the end of Jack Leggett's tenure, but you knew what Jack Leggett's teams were. They were tough. They were going to fight. The talent had dropped off, but you knew they were gonna give it to you every game, and that's what you're seeing from Coach Bakich's team. Yeah, sure, there'd love to be more power arms in the rotation, and I know you probably get sick of seeing those texts from me, but they've got to get more power. But I know you tell Jenny, look at this idiot said, but they've got to get more of that. But they don't have that this year. This is who they are, and who they are has been pretty damn good through almost 40 games.
We will see how that turns out down the stretch, and of course, keep you posted on it right here and on Twitter, both the Crazy Daniel tweets and the midweek outside the heat of the moment tweets. Hey, we're all a different kind of fan and a different kind of follower, when they're not on the field, right? And we're all juiced up when they're playing. So
Don't post those
included.
tweets. Just
No,
don't post those tweets. No.
should,
Well, don't post my texts. Let's say that.
are the texts worse than the tweets?
A
No.
text is worse than a tweet. Yes, you've
Yeah.
seen my text. Don't post my
Every
text.
now and then. Hey, I do it too, right? So
Yes.
I ain't singling you out. Uh, X.com/Clemson Kickoff. We're at Clemson Kickoff on all the socials, by the way. And we are working on some off-season stuff. I hope we can pull it together the way that it looks like it will, but I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So stick with us. We will also keep you posted on portal happenings for the football team, for the basketball team. I think there's going to be additional news coming out on both of those squads. So until our next episode, I'm Bill Zimmerman.
I'm Daniel Shirley. Go Tigers.